Okay, so we're doing something a little different today, namely talking about the game's, in this case Overwatch's, design/mechanics. Let's just call it Armchair mechanics, since mechanics and narrative have the same syllables, and just flows better than Armchair design, which is already a thing. Cool? Cool. So yeah, does Overwatch reward selfish behavior is the question of the day, and without wishing to spoil the ending, I had to conclude that, fuck yeah it does. To the list. First of all, insta-locking. Insta-locking a hero and not budging from your pick and ignoring your teammates' cries of reconsidering is the best way to get what you want. I'm sure you all had an experience like this. Team comes set, strategy ready, all is left is to pick the heroes, then bam! Someone just picks insert tilting hero here and does not switch off even if Jeff Kaplan himself comes to his house and offers him all the golden weapons in the game and a one-night stand with Roadhog. The problem here is not that someone is confident in their pick or that they don't adhere to the almighty meta, which can make the game feel stale when everyone is forcing 2-2-2, triple tank, dive or whatever. No, it's just that when the team as a whole has a clear strategy in mind and are actually working together as a unit, this action can completely throw the whole thing off. Whether it's viable to go triple DPS, have no hit scans or healers, or try an attack torp is irrelevant. What is relevant is that you always have to play around the person who stubbornly refuses to switch off. You might want to go with a nice and fast dive comp, but nope, Mr. Me just wants to play McCree. What do? Well, you have two options. Either ignore it and try to make it work regardless, or decide it's better if you build around this forced pick, giving McCree a Rhino or Orisa shield, maybe a Mercy for damage boost, whatevs. Maybe you want a nice stable 2-2-2 and the DPS is already selected, but this year's winner of the Center of the Universe award decides, nah, I'll just pick a third DPS. Again, having 3 DPS is not the problem. Trying out all sorts of compositions and not playing the same 5-6 heroes is a major part of the game. That's fine, but when one person can overrule the decision of 5 others and force them to adapt to his or her choice, that's when it becomes a problem. Either one of the 2 established DPS has to switch off, or the team has to readjust to a different strategy. Whichever they choose, the selfish player who just does what he wants gets to play what he wants, and everyone else has to compensate/work around it. Second, rage switching. Kind of similar to insta-locking, except instead of doing it at the beginning of the game, a player resorts to it during it. Let's say you're playing everyone's favorite Raspinator and you're doing pretty well. You're flanking, killing, getting ults off, killing, not dying, killing, and communicating with your team, and killing. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, one of the tanks/support says, "You're not doing shit, let me DPS." Baffled at this unfounded accusation, you start to reevaluate your current performance, and after a little objectivity, you come to the conclusion that, well, you're doing fine. Sure, you're not making top 500 players envy your skills or anything, but you're hardly the vacuum of competence that this person accuses you of. And just as you're about to inform this player that you think you're doing fine, they decide to take the initiative and just switch off without warning. Again, in this case you can either keep your current role since you feel it is justified and risk a less steady comp or even tilting your teammates who are not the biggest fans of suddenly changing strats mid-game, or you can bow down to the will of the selfish player and just fill in his role. Whichever you choose, the problem still remains that one player's selfish action leaves you to adapt to new circumstances they forced on you and your team. Third, one-tricks always get their way. 300 hours on Genji, 200 hours on Pharah, 400 hours on Mercy, 5,000 hours on Hanzo, yet still can't hit a damn thing, and nothing else. Players who choose one and only one hero and play nothing else have a huge advantage when it comes to picking heroes. You can't seriously expect someone who has 300 hours on McCree and nothing but McCree to just stick to Reinhardt or Winston, can you? You don't really want that 200-hour Mercy main and nothing else to try his or her hand at Ana or D.Va, do you? Whenever a one-trick is part of your team, you have 2 options again. Either let them play their waifu, and why wouldn't you, since they can't perform on anything else, thus always getting what they want, or force them to play something different, in which case they'll more often than not throw a tantrum, hiding behind the justification of, "How dare you neglect all the work they have put into Hero X and put them on tank/support duty." And even if they don't, if you lose, they'll always have the smug satisfaction of being able to tell you, "Great idea putting the X main on Y hero, dumbass." It's just another advantage a selfish, less team play-oriented player has over others. They always get to play what they want, and they always have a good reason for not picking anything else, not having any experience with them, and again, just force the team to adhere to their playstyle. Fourth, SR doesn't care about win rates. SR, that skill rating, does not reward you points for how much you win, but how well you perform. Allow me to explain. Let's say you play Widowmaker and nothing else. Well, assuming you are like the rest of the human race, repetition will lead to improvement, thus you will be an exceptionally good Widowmaker. The SR system will look at your performance and conclude that you are performing well above the majority of terrible backstory-stricken snipers, thus it will give you above average points for every win. All fine and dandy. But it will also decide that since you're above average, you should not be going down the skill ladder, rather up, so every time you lose far less points than others. Which leads us to players who have something akin to 40 or even 30% win rates, meaning they lose the majority of matches they play, duh, and are still going up. Simple math time. You have a 40% win rate, which is abysmal. But you have 3 million hours on Torbjorn, so you're probably decent. So the game gives you, let's say, 30 points, which is pretty good, not the 50 50 and 60 category, but you can't complain. Then, when you lose, it deducts, say, 15, which is not that much. So after 10 games, you will lose 6 of those games, which means you also drop 90 points, but you won 4 games, which gives you 120 points. So at the end of your little session where you lost 60% of your games, again the majority of them, you went up 30 points. How? How is losing more than you're winning beneficial to someone's rank? This system rewards player behavior that is incredibly self-serving, since more than half of the time the 5 other players on the team will get screwed, but that does not concern a selfish player, since he knows, on average, his high performance will let him climb. The difference between gained and lost points can be much higher, leading to players who lose most of the time, which in turn makes their teammates lose as well, but still reach their goal of diamond, master, whatever. This system just rewards not switching, not adapting, not caring about team play, and frankly ignoring a core part of the game, which is hero countering and of course hero composition. And you know what's funny? I used to think this is great. Why shouldn't I be rewarded if I'm playing well? If I'm busting my ass and outperforming tons of other players and yet we still lose, it should be the weakest link that gets punished, not the one who did most of the work. Yeah! But I just don't think it's a healthy system for an inherently teamwork based game, since your best course of action to climb is to just mute everyone, don't look at the chat, and stick to your Symmetra, Junkrat, whatever pick, and wait for the day when the SR system realizes how amazing of a grenade chugger you are. Lastly, it is not advised to flex. Flexing is the art of playing a wide range of heroes, so you can usually fill in a crucial yet missing part in a team. Dive tank or death ball tank? You got it. Healer or a hit scan? Yep, no problem. You get the idea. But it is usually not worth it to flex. Quick question. Who do you think is going to climb faster? Someone with 400 hours on 2 heroes or someone with 40 hours on 10? As the system currently is, being okay at a bunch of heroes and somewhat good on a few is not going to get you far. Yes, there are flex players in GM and top 500. There are people who have no mains per se, but these players usually have an absurd amount of time played, meaning every hero they flex to is a stable pick and they have others playing with them. Not necessarily a 6-stack, but enough to complement the other players' playstyles. So if you're in the mindset of trying to help the team out and get whatever is needed, or just feel like a dick for always forcing your picks on others, hogging the DPS role or whatever, you're going to have a harder time than someone who just decides, fuck it. So again, the system is kind of not rewarding the most team play minded of its players. Oh yeah, and the game rewards good internet connection, since if you load in faster than anyone else, you get to choose whatever. An obvious conspiracy with service providers if I ever saw one. Okay, with the whining out of the way, let's get to the important part. How should this be fixed? Well, frankly, some things I don't think can be fixed, since they're a core part of the game's design. There is not much you can do about insta-locking and changing, it's just something you have to work around. Same thing with rage switching. Since, again, the game is designed to counter-pick and switch heroes mid-match, you can't really remove that. In games like League and Dota, you pick your heroes at the beginning of the match and are stuck with them throughout, so you better have a stable lineup from the get-go. Though the heroes in those games are quite flexible, since most characters can fill 2-3 roles and switch up their abilities, items, and general playstyles during the game. But unless we want to plop down an item shop on Numbani, I don't think it's getting fixed. One tricking also lacks an answer. I mean, sure, you could make it where you can't go into competitive until you put at least 10 hours into 2 tanks, 2 supports, and 2 DPSs each, but aside from it being a laughably dictatorial way of fixing something, it would just make it that much of a pain in the ass to get into competitive, probably to the detriment of quick play, since most people would just go into a match, let their cat waltz over their keyboard for 10 minutes, rinse, repeat, or just give your account to your little brother or something. The SR gain despite below 50% win rate might be the easiest one to fix. One option that's being tossed around is to have a much more frigid win plus 25, lose minus 25 reward system, since then you really have to take into consideration your chances of winning instead of how many headshots can I get in this match to inflate my gains. The other solution is a bit more tricky, but I think it's worth a shot. Instead of basing the point gains on your performance with a hero, base it on your win rate with him/her. If you have, say, a nice 56% win rate that's steadily going up, the game can easily acknowledge that on average you're performing well with this hero. This way, losing would be a bigger concern, since dropping below 50% would tell the system that you're not really pulling your weight, and regardless of your performance, you're simply not winning games. This would also help with the last problem of flexing. Player who has a positive win rate with 4 or 5 heroes would get rewarded for their good decision making and strategic use of the hero pool. Now, of course, these solutions could have problems of their own. Maybe the probability of being carried would increase, maybe we'd end up with a similar situation where people without the mechanical skills necessary would find themselves in ranks they don't belong in, etc. But I think we can all agree that as the system currently is, it's not really all that supportive of the jolly cooperation that Blizzard intended. If you guys have any thoughts or ideas on how the system could be reworked a bit, post them down below and maybe we can work something out. In the meantime, insta-lock, mute, and one trick, and I'll see you in the top 500. A couple of things I forgot to add. First of all, There's no team rating, so if you're grouping up with a bunch of friends all the time, then you're probably not going to get far, since the SR system is so random that you can easily fall out of each other's SR range, so there goes your lovely group of friends. But it is not advised to play in a big team anyway, since if you're grouped up with 2 or more players, the SR gain is heavily against you, discouraging team play and forcing people to rely on just solo queuing and hoping the random people they meet will be all nice. Not necessarily the most team-based system, I think. Anyway, thanks for watching.